So good morning here from London and good afternoon in Australia. I'm here with Rosendo Travieso, who is the Global Head of Mobile Services for Telefonica Global. And we're delighted to have this opportunity to interview you today and talk about the future of mobile.
Cool.
So let's start off talking about Telefonica. Telefonica really has made Spain into a powerhouse of telecommunications. Mm-hmm. So it's a great source of national pride. It's the 8th largest telco in the world, I believe, in 24 countries. So it's probably not so well known in other countries. So give us a bit of background on Telefonica and what it's all about.
Okay. So, I mean, we operate in 24 countries, as you said. We actually provide telecommunication services and digital services. And part of the work is actually not only providing this to end customers, but also providing to a very large multinationals as well. So our activity is not only on that, but also media, connectivity, and elements which are related to the capabilities, not only devices, but also Internet of Things, end-to-end, and things like that.
Right. And your job as a Global Head of Mobile Services, and it's a very impressive job title. So tell us what you do on a kind of day-to-day basis.
So basically, what my team and myself work on developing new solutions, mainly for multinationals. We work on what we call a perimeter area, which involves multinationals working together with us, providing solutions for mobile, not only something related to mobile services, but also other services like device management, mobile applications, and things like that.
Right. And I think even though Telefonica isn't that well known, there is obviously the other brand, which is O2, which is here in the UK, I believe. What's the connection between the two? What's the relationship between Telefonica and O2?
Well, Telefonica bought O2 in 2005, and basically that's why they developed the brands as they were actually coming along.
Yep.
The objective of this was actually improving their market positioning and also not killing a brand which actually was working properly fine. So basically, they kept it in Germany, they kept it in Ireland, now and Czech Republic, and they kept Movistar in Spain, and obviously in Latin America as well.
Right. So let's talk about mobile and the mobile industry, because obviously an awful lot has changed probably in the last 2 or 3 years. There's an awful lot of kind of challenger brands and challenger products coming in. You've got things like WhatsApp on the messaging side. You've got things like Viber, which are completely changing the world of voice. So tell me how you see that the industry has changed and where this is all going.
Well, I mean, that's what we call the guys you mentioned actually are quite relevant because they're using our what we say our pipe, our network to actually provide services over the top. So the idea of providing services over the top means that you don't have to invest for all this infrastructure, but also providing services which are actually separated from the complexity of the network. So what happens is on messaging we act in a way defensively. Mm-hmm. So we have certain applications like To Go, like Telefonica Blue. But in certain areas, I think there are certain battlegrounds, and I think the main ones are actually media, which, for example, you've got Netflix, you've got people like Hulu, you've got people like Amazon Prime Instant. You also have the cloud area, so for example, Dropbox, Box.net, and things like that. And also you have another area, which is probably where we're going to see a lot, is voice. So as you mentioned, Viber as well. And also voice over IP is going to make a huge change now because obviously people are using less voice and more data. Everything will be data eventually.
That's right. So is that where the focus is for the business? I mean, because you're right, everything is going through your pipe. It's all about data. Yeah. So is that where the focus of Telefonica or O2, is that the future?
The focus is how to differentiate in that world where everything is very commoditized, especially, connectivity, and how we can offer something that other players do not have. So, for example, we have a huge amount of knowledge about our networks, what our customers do, what actually their particular use with a particular location, and that is actually very valuable for us to customize the experience to provide additional value that nobody else can do.
Yeah.
And that's actually basically our defensive approach, but also providing services which are beyond that. For example, on Telefonica Blue, we offer encryption. We provide banks their own encryption if they wanted to. So actually provide something that no other player can provide, because we control the network, right at the very bottom anyway.
Yeah, and you mentioned two really important things there. One is commoditization, which obviously is a reality, and customer experience, and this idea that, as Telefonica, you do want to deliver a different customer experience as a point of differentiation.
Correct.
So what are some of the kind of practical ways in which you've been providing a different customer experience for individuals?
Well, I mean, mainly part of the work, actually, especially with multinationals, involves a huge amount of testing, and doing quite a lot of A/B testing and basically having the experience right. We do believe that adoption, especially for mobile application, is very much about user experience. You don't have the user experience right, basically nobody will use your app. But also, I think it's also providing an additional level of value and service in the most simple and straightforward way. So, for example, most of our operators provide information about how much they spend, how much they use, and people are actually constantly informed about what kind of services they have as well. Yes. They can actually try services temporarily for free, so they can actually say, well, I want to try 4G or video or high-speed video or things like that, and they can actually try it for a short term actually for free, and then if they decide to continue, they can continue. So the idea is quite a lot of tasters, additional experience, and actually make it very seamless to the customer, which is basically, you don't feel you're actually connecting something very complicated into the device. You're actually providing something which feels, you turn it on and it just works, and that's part of what we're trying to do for customer experience here.
Yeah, absolutely. So do you believe that mobile phones are now seen, they're not really seen as a phone, they're kind of seen as data on the move. What are you doing to make sure that you kind of can get customers to focus on the product itself rather than just looking at it as a commodity?
Well, the problem is, since most people are actually using Apple iPhones, and what happens with Apple is that before, people wouldn't care. I mean, I remember back in 1999, you would ask somebody, says, what kind of phone you have? What kind of operator you have? Are you on O2 or T-Mobile? And people would say, no, I'm Nokia. And that was a clear indication that the phone was completely unimportant. People didn't really know. And now you ask somebody, says, what do you have? And people say, well, I have an S4, and it's a Samsung. And people say, I have an iPhone 5. So I think that's one thing. So the device has actually made it as part of the big point of sale element, or the actual big value element. Is more on part of the value chain. Secondly, the services around with it actually even more commoditized. Who cares? You're running an iPhone, you're running a Samsung. It's all the services with the network actually there anyway. The third point is the fact that basically the phones are becoming less important. I mean, I think that the curve is actually changing again, and people saying, well, people are buying less iPhones, people are buying less Samsung devices, and I think that's changing again. People are becoming less interested about that. I think the next stage is actually applications, where basically it doesn't matter where you run, the phone or the device or the network, it's about your application. And at the moment it's actually very fragmented, because you've got Viber, WhatsApp, Telegram, there's so many different things. And I think there's going to be an element of consolidation when one will talk to every one of them, and therefore, in a way, affecting our business, because if you think about it, a common interface is SMS. And you don't need anything on the phone or an application to download to actually make SMS work or voice work. The problem at the moment is you have so many apps to actually make it work. And if your friend doesn't have it, or if your colleague doesn't have it, it just doesn't work. Whereas SMS or any other standard apps, are actually there. Once we reach that point, I think it's going to happen that any application which can talk to anybody else will actually rule the phone. And it doesn't really matter what the phone is. We actually even experimenting that you can drop a phone or lose the phone, and we can actually you get a new one, and push all the information into the phone, including the app. So basically the device is not important anymore. It's almost like a laptop. You lose it after get a new one. All the data is in the cloud. Who cares?
Yeah, that's right. So is there a role for you to play there, as in Telefonica, to kind of play a role in this consolidation, which you're right needs?
Yeah, absolutely. Because we were part of Firefox OS, and which also means Firefox OS is actually saying, well, it's the software, which is actually very important, and it's not the actual device. So who cares what device? Device is another computing device. It could be a laptop, it could be a tablet. That is actually almost like a hygienic factor. And what we have now is actually software. What runs on top is applications. So whichever device you want, it doesn't matter. Everything will eventually run I mean, interestingly, on an Android, you can run virtualized operating systems. So, for example, on an S5, you can run two versions of the same thing at the same time, just like in a laptop, for example.
Right.
And that's actually something completely new. Now, on an iPhone 5, you could probably do it. Obviously, Apple doesn't allow that. But interestingly, what happens is you could probably have a virtualized version of an Android phone and an iPhone on the same device. Eventually, you could do that because all these systems can actually run in virtual mode as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Imagine that.
It's the next stage.
Yeah.
So obviously we are in the midst of, or maybe at the start of, a digital revolution, and we talk about it a lot, and the role that mobile is going to play. So how is Telefonica leading what we're calling the digital revolution, but maybe the mobile revolution?
Well, we're actually in this building is actually Telefonica Digital, and that's basically our kind of our bet for a digital future, and how we work together to actually make it happen. And I think it's actually very relevant because what we do is a lot of elements we're actually beyond the device and beyond the connectivity. And we say beyond connectivity. I mean, outside, we're actually outside waiting, and it says beyond connectivity. That is our motto, is that offering services which are beyond the basic commoditized connectivity services. And that means whether there are services through applications, or the services through any other elements that we can supply. You know, cloud services, data marts, for example, on the spot, which is very much retail services, which are completely outside the device and possibly more close to the Internet of Things, which is, I would say, probably the next frontier for mobile.
Yep. So for those that are listening and don't know about the Internet of Things, so explain what you mean by that. And particularly kind of what it means in the context of Telefonica.
So we run a particular practice which is called the M2M, so machine to machine, which is a technical name to say small devices connected to the internet, really. And basically that's what it is. It's mobile devices connected to the internet. So we won a very large contract in the UK, managing all the metering for the whole country. It's a multi-billion contract to do that. And that means that we're basically going to have a SIM card and a device attached to every one of the meters, electricity meters, gas meters in the UK.
Wow.
And we're talking about millions and millions. We're talking about 14 million to start with, anyway. But that basically means that the electricity company doesn't need to ask you for a meter reading. They can do it for you. And actually, at the same time, it can tell you how to minimize your carbon footprint by actually reducing consumption of electricity or managing consumption of electricity at different times. It also means that for an electricity company can manage consumption, actually cater for more customized tariffs, because it means that it will probably say, well, if you spend less during the night, which is when it's actually critical and there's more consumption, you actually get a benefit, and they're actually looking at that. So imagine that before couldn't be thought about. How come if I don't turn on the lights during the night, I get a discount? Because effectively that is when it's crunch time for consumption. So there's quite a lot of really clever stuff you can do as a result of this Internet of Things. And if you think about it, if you wear one of those intelligent fitness watches, effectively, what we call quantified self, that's exactly the same thing. You're quantifying your own thing. You say, you're using a Samsung Gear or whatever, and that's another element. And what we're also doing is implementing the telemetry for airplane engines as well. So, for example, jet engines have telemetry, and they actually communicate with the base. And we're implementing something like that. So, for example, planes which actually land and they have issues, the actual engine sends information back home to say, well, there is a problem here. And you only need an engineer to actually see that the engine is already telling you that there is a problem. So it's a really, really clever stuff. And that's partly why it's so very exciting, because we're putting connectivity and connecting these devices to the internet to actually make them more intelligent.
Tell me a little bit, when we spoke earlier, we were talking about cars, and that you've got some project that's happening, is it with Tesla?
Yeah, that's right.
So what's that?
So we're a particular connectivity device, SIM card and some software runs on the Tesla, on the electric car, in the whole of Europe. And so basically, with the exception of Holland, which is managed by KPN, but the rest is actually Telefonica. And we actually, this card actually can do around 2 gigs of data every month. So it's actually, it's crazy. I mean, I had a test drive in Miami, and it was very interesting because actually at the end of the test, you can actually see how much data the actual car uploaded to their central system. So actually it drove for like 15 minutes. And it managed to upload around 85 megs of data about what I did with the car. So it's pretty amazing stuff. Yeah.
No, it absolutely is. So moving or changing gears, no pun intended, a little bit now, to another subject that keeps coming up, and I really kind of need to understand where we are with mobile wallet. I hear a lot about mobile wallet, but yet we're not really seeing anything come forward at the moment. So tell us about what is the mobile wallet, and what is the future of it? Is it something that we're going to start see rolling out, or what's the what's the future?
Yeah, so it's a tricky one actually. Because, I mean, for years we've been told, oh, this is coming. Is people will stop. I mean, they already stopped using cash in a way. I mean, using cards. But moving the transition between card and the mobile phone is slightly more complicated because I think there's an element of trust. And we believe, I mean, we tried, we have auto money for a number of years here in the UK. We're doing quite a lot of work in Spain as well with La Caixa, which is one of the largest banks, and Santander. And basically the objective of this is that we see that the only way for people to trust to put their money into a mobile phone, which in a way is the closest you could probably be as a wallet, is through a bank. Because although most people don't like banks, we still trust them with our money, funny enough. And this is, in a way, it's a dichotomy, because people say, well, I don't like these guys, but I still wouldn't give the money to anybody else. Now, Tesco launched this week, Tesco supermarket, a big supermarket, I don't know if it's in Australia, but it's pretty much everywhere, in the UK and in Europe. They launched a new bank, and they actually hired 300 people, and they got Tesco Bank. And the idea is doing supermarket banking. So it's as simple as commoditized as being a supermarket, and everything is mobile, through their own mobile, Tesco mobile venture. So it's interesting, actually. Let's see what happens there. But our visibility of this is that it's likely to be driven together with operators and together with banks. There's also a new initiative called SAP here in the UK only, which is almost like a joint venture of a payment system, which actually conglomerates HSBC, Barclays, Lloyds, RBC, so the largest banks in the UK. It still started, I mean, it started in April, so we don't know what's going to happen. I think there's a lot of stuff going on, but we don't really know. I think everybody's trying lots of different things and see what happens.
Is the challenge with the mobile wallet that we're trying to get the financial institutions and the telcos to kind of work together?
Everybody wants to own the customer.
And everyone wants to own the customer.
And both own the customer in some way. But not to the point of being completely trustworthy for the customer. And I think part of the insight that we had was the customer wants to see more than a wallet. They say, well, if you're going to replace something that holds my cards and my cash on my phone, it needs to be very more clever than that.
Yeah.
Because to be honest, replacing one thing with another, it just doesn't really, we didn't replace, paper with computers. Computers are way more than that. You know what I mean? So I think that's probably where it's happening. And also people want to do transfers. I think the main thing is checking balances, doing transfers, and that's about it. And this is it. It's very limited.
Yeah. So maybe someone like a PayPal, they've obviously they have an app, and you can literally pay on your phone. So where do they kind of fit into the equation? I guess they're kind of somewhere in the middle.
They're somewhere in the middle because actually we're with credit cards, so it's a slightly different thing. So with banks you work with a current account. So PayPal is very much a credit card business. I think it's interestingly there are a couple of issues with PayPal. It's very good, and the problem is discovery, which is always the same problem. It's like, what are you going to do with your phone? Are you going to scan it? Are you going to enter a PIN number? What are you going to do? And discovery and authentication is the main issue. And the second one is the fact that despite the fact that you use PayPal with a credit card, you don't have the same credit guarantees that you have with a credit card. So, for example, if something gets broken or somebody didn't give you the item you bought, for example, distance regulations, People say, well, not my problem, you know.
Yeah.
Whereas the credit cards will actually say, no, we're obliged by the Credit Act in 1974 to actually do something about it. And if it's distant regulation, even worse, because basically they cannot charge you until they actually deliver and dispatching the item. So you're way more protected. I think people actually understood that although, you know, paying with credit card is actually safer, PayPal is inconvenient, but it still doesn't have the same legal protection, let's say consumer law protection that you would have with a credit card.
That's right. I want to make sure that if anyone wants to ask a question, that there is the opportunity to do so. So if you want to ask a question, you can just type it into the pane on the left-hand side, and then we can answer those questions for you. I just want to kind of stay on that theme because it's a really important point from a consumer's perspective. There's a concern about security and there's a concern about privacy and what is going to happen with data. And I think we're all quite conscious that really data does underpin all of this. And as you said, everyone wants to own the customer, which really means own the customer's data.
Yeah, correct.
So what about the privacy issues from a Telefonica point of view? What are you doing to put in place kind of controls around that? And what are you doing to make the consumer feel that they are more protected, that the right thing is going to happen with their data?
Okay. So, I mean, there's a number of dimensions here. One is actually customer data regarding, you know, their usage and regarding what they're actually doing with their messages and what they're sharing with their friends and all that kind of thing. So obviously there is a level of security which is part of the device and the network and all that. Obviously, communications on the devices are not encrypted, but they have some basic encryption, which is, you know, from 1991, which is the very early GSM systems anyway. But what happens at the moment is how do we take care of the data that our customers store in our services and all that. So, for example, by using encryption, most of the picture messages are actually encrypted since the very beginning when we implemented vector messaging. So there's quite a lot of protection there. Now, the main issue at the moment is that, for example, if an application, it happened to me probably a couple of weeks ago when I was traveling, and my phone started updating all these applications, obviously, and part of the update is actually sending quite a lot of usage data, and I felt, well, all these applications are actually doing all these updates, sending around 50 megs in roaming, which I wasn't very pleased with that, because I couldn't stop them because they were saying, Google decided to actually say, well, you need to update all this, and you cannot stop the thing. When we managed to stop it, there were actually 10 apps updating at the same time. So the main issue here is the fact that the over-the-top services don't have the same level of security, and WhatsApp was actually famous for being, criticized by the security model and all that stuff. So I think what we can do within the envelope of our service is what we can do. For example, mobile advertising and all services like that, we're actually guaranteeing that. We have anonymity, especially when they're doing targeting and things like that. We don't pass the information into our partners. And all the information we pass is anonymized anyway. And in countries like where we operate, for example, in Germany, we respect the specific laws regarding digit masking and all that. So we do respect all the elements, and in some cases we actually go above. For example, one of the services we have for voice, we provide encrypted voice services as well. So this is actually designed for banks and for large automobile companies who actually are sharing secrets, and they need a secure line constantly. So we're very mindful. To be honest, the trust is based on the respect of privacy and the respect of the data protection laws. If we lose that, we lose everything.
Absolutely. We recently did a piece of research as ADMA, talking to about 1,600 consumers about how they felt about companies using their data. And the word you used is exactly right, it's about trust. And trust is built through transparency and making sure that the customer knows exactly what's going to happen with their data, and that there's an avenue to go down if something does go wrong, that they can sort the issue out. So we've only got a couple of minutes left, and I kind of want to get on to what is the future of mobile. And I think one of the key areas that people are looking at the moment and saying this could completely change our lives is wearable technology. So what's your view on wearable technology, and where is Telefonica playing in that spin?
Right. So wearables is interesting because it's very maturing. There's a lot of things coming on. And they all do roughly the same thing, but probably not the way an Apple device would do it. So everybody's waiting. So where's the the idea. Where's the idea? Where is, what is it? And there's been lots of rumors about. I think the three frontiers. One is probably wearables, which is basically quantify self and the ability to actually have something that can measure your activities. The other one is TV. And funny enough, that's another area where Apple is actually working and Samsung is actually working as well. I think that's another. It's home entertainment. And the last one is I think it's actually Internet of Things. So, for example, how to connect certain Nest or things that all in the home, and that's actually probably it's only the self, only the person, only the home. And it's a scary thing, It's like it's almost like back into the world of Terminator, when we have all this Skynet and controlling everything. And I think it's in a way, although scary, I think connecting the systems, which do not make them intelligent, although we call them intelligent systems, made them more available, made them more configurable effectively. So you actually give in an interface, so you can actually change the temperature, you can actually check your hardware, you can actually understand quite a lot of additional data. The problem with that, and going back to the privacy element, is the fact that all this data, where is going to go? And you are creating lots of data. My heating system will create data. My TV will create data. Well, my viewing habits as well. And how do we control that? Because all this data at the moment is not really regulated. My Netflix service will actually upload all the stuff I watch and all that stuff, or my son, especially now because they have different identities, so they know what my son loves and what I look. And it's quite interesting because effectively how are we going to control the data? And that is connected to what happened with Google in Europe, where people wanted the right to be left, to be forgotten effectively, which is about do not remember me anymore, stop using this data for anything else, and mainly advertising. But it's actually connected. Imagine it's all this data we have the power to actually control it and to say, well, I don't want my heating system to tell my electricity company how much heating I use or whatever, or that I turn it on at 7 in the morning, that kind of thing. So although quite almost like lateral things, are actually quite relevant because that's part of us. Our data is part of us, and it's actually coming out. And it's protecting that. It's very important.
It's a really interesting one, and actually that right to be forgotten is something that's just been introduced here in the UK, I believe, and it's this idea of I don't want you to use my data, and it's not only you as a company can stop using my data, but actually anyone you passed on to needs to stop using the data as well. And that's quite a big step to take in terms of a regulator. And you do wonder whether it is going to go full circle, well, maybe not full circle, maybe half circle, where obviously this data has the opportunity to completely change our lives, but as individuals, what's the level of change that we want? And as a business, I guess we have to be mindful of this.
Absolutely. I mean, this is actually very, very important because if we have people not wanting to share the data, it doesn't help us as a business to actually customize the experience, to provide best possible customer experience anyway, and for retailers as well. Customer experience, customize the particular fashion or particular services is critical. And if you don't have access to that data, you cannot customize it. You cannot create the experience you want to create for customers.
So last question is about kind of your aspirations for Telefonica globally, and have you got any plans to expand into Australia?
Well, we're already working with Singtel, which is actually Optus in Australia. We also have an agreement with Telstra as well. And also we're working with Telecom New Zealand as well. So basically in that area, we're definitely working for our customers over there. I think there's a large logistics company which are actually working in Australia as well, which are currently working with as well, in Singapore as well.
And we've actually got one question come through, so I want to make sure that we have an opportunity to answer that. So has the UK seen the same rise in bring your own device for companies, and has Telefonica looked into making organisations more productive?
Right, this is actually a really good question because back in 2012 with the Olympics, there was a big issue about, kind of meltdown of we have more than 5 million people during that time. London was very busy.
Yes.
I was there, and I tell you, it was the tube was a nightmare.
An experience.
You had to be early. You had to be, leave early, stop early, or stop very late. People loved it because it's part of the experience. But I think what happened, the exercise we did at Telefonica was actually how do we make sure that people can actually work anywhere? And part of the Bring Your Own is enabling our employees to actually work anywhere with Bring Your Own. So, for example, employees are actually allowed to bring their own devices. We can actually secure them and all that, and they have applications which allow them to actually make calls and all that as well. If it's not a corporate device, we see a huge rise, but not as much as the US. Obviously, our US companies are probably right up there in terms of the level of Bring Your Own they allow. I mean, they're now allowing Bring Your Own application, so it's Bring Your Own A, so BYOA, yeah, which is quite interesting. And what happened now, I think, is the fact that people are bringing the devices, bringing the laptops as well, and also allowing access to certain services and systems. So the IT department is always, very protective, and we need to create a new structure. So we did in Telefonica as a business create the Bring Your Own model, which will allow that as well. Take-up is very high because people want to use their own shiny things. That's right. So yeah,
we're all addicted to them.
Yeah.
So we're out of time. So I wanted to thank you on behalf of both myself and ADMA and anyone that's doing today.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rosendo. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Cheers.
Thank you.